speak to Andreas Krieg. He's an associate professor at the School of Security Studies at King's College London. He joins us from the British capital. Andreas, welcome to Al Jazeera. So on that last point that I made, what is the Israeli military's logic in announcing this possible ground invasion into southern Lebanon, given recent surprise attacks on Hezbollah communication devices?
Well, I mean, I think we're still in a very early stage. Overall, the overall strategic sort of consideration by Israel and Hezbollah haven't changed. Neither side want an all-out war. Israel particularly doesn't want to get dragged into a long ground war that obviously will be atrocious, that Israel will be unlikely to win. And obviously Hezbollah has been preparing for this for nearly 2 decades. So Israel is trying to put up and ramp up the pressure, and we've seen that over the last 7 days. This is part of a gradual sort of escalatory trajectory whereby Israel is putting increasing pressure on Hezbollah, trying to shift and kind of turn the tide of this conflict. Because initially, for the last 11 months at least, Hezbollah was seemingly on the forefront of sustaining pressure indefinitely. And now Israel is putting more pressure on Hezbollah to kind of force Hezbollah to come to the negotiation table and to discuss the withdrawal of Hezbollah fighters north of the Litani River, which I think at this point is very unlikely as long as Israel is not making any concessions on the Gaza front and seeking a ceasefire there.
What we do know, whether or not this incursion does happen, is that Israel has specifically said that it's called up reservists to potentially go into southern Lebanon. What should we read into that? We know, of course, Israel is very much permanently on a war footing, but the calling up of reservists here, what does that mean?
Well, that's part of the overall deterrence picture. It's coercion. It's coercive rhetoric, and the fact yesterday that the chief of staff made that statement surrounded by senior militaries in military fatigue all suggest that Israel is ready, that Israel is prepared and preparing to go in. I don't think that this incursion is imminent, which means obviously Benjamin Netanyahu is in New York today, so as long as he's out of the country, it will be unlikely that Israel is going to make any move. But they're certainly preparing for it. The call-up of 8,000 reservists is significant. I don't think that the IDF is yet ready to kind of go into opening a third front on the ground. Mind you, they're bogged down in Gaza in an atrocious conflict. They're not winning. They now opened a new front in the West Bank, which is also likely going to pull in more and more capacity. And obviously a war in Lebanon against Hezbollah on the ground with infantry, with combined arms, will be extremely difficult for the IDF at this point. I think they're quite overstretched. And obviously it's a different ballgame, fighting Hezbollah on the ground versus just pounding them from the air. So I think in this kind of context, we need to be mindful that Israel is certainly ramping up the coercive rhetoric and the sort of signaling. The posture is changing, but I don't think they're yet ready to go in.
Talking about, as you say, pounding Lebanon from the air, we know that strikes have hit Mount Lebanon to the north of Beirut. These are areas outside traditional Hezbollah strongholds or even Shia areas. Lebanon, as we know, is a highly divided society, mostly along sectarian lines. What do we understand the impact on non-Shia communities will be in Lebanon?
Well, obviously, Hezbollah is more than just, a Shia militia in the south. I mean, they're a quasi-state actor. They have taken over responsibility across Lebanon, providing all kinds of services from education to healthcare. And obviously, they're extremely, the Bekaa Valley, that's where Hezbollah really started. I mean, in terms of command and control, it's certainly a very, very important sort of location. But the problem that Israel finds is that, Hezbollah is very tightly weaved into the social fabric of Lebanon. If you want to accept it or not, whether you're Christian or you're Sunni, Hezbollah is there. So any strike on Hezbollah will inevitably drag other, sectarian parts of Lebanon into the conflict. And I think Israel is underestimating to what extent Lebanese people, even if they don't stand traditionally with Hezbollah, are now seeing this as an attack on Lebanon. This is not an attack on Hezbollah. And I think Israel has already failed of kind of building a narrative of saying, this is a war with Hezbollah. We're not at war with Lebanon. I think most Lebanese people would disagree with that this is a war against Lebanon. And I think that's something that will make it even more difficult for Israel to sustain a longer operation within Lebanon.
Andreas Krieg, Associate Professor at the School of Security Studies, King's College London. Good to hear your thoughts and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.